Welcome to SorWil's Community Solutions, where we talk about what's going on in our community. I'm Joe Wilson, CEO of SorWil Technology Solutions, and with me today is Kathryn Hancock, our marketing director. We have Ken Miller, local professional
communications professional.
Okay, local communications professional. We always get these wrong. And today our special guest is Commissioner Mike Smith.
Thank you, Joe.
We really appreciate you being here today.
Not a
It's
problem.
an honor to have you with us. You guys are doing a lot of work up there, so I know there's a lot to discuss. People have all kinds of questions.
Absolutely.
And so this is really just a great opportunity to let everybody that's viewing know what's going on in our community and how you're helping them with what's going on.
Okay, great. You want me to start? Go ahead.
Well, why don't you just tell us about your...
Yeah. When were you first elected county commissioner? Just to give some background for folks that might not know.
I just started my fifth year. So I was at 2020.
You only had, I know you kind of got shortchanged because you had to run more often than most, right?
Well, because they had just went to 5 county commissioners. It used to be 3, which I think the 5 county commissioners is a blessing because you get to cover more areas, you get to cover more cities, and you don't have 2 people making decisions on. It's better when you got a 3-4 or 3-2 vote. So it did that, and of course before that it was the city minister for 16 years, then police department for a little over 21, 16.
City of Lansing.
All city.
And you were mayor.
Yeah, I was about
Yeah,
to say,
that's
and you're
right.
mayor.
I was mayor for there too. Snuck that in there. That's
Yeah.
true. In other words, I was with the city for 40 years and one job the other. I just like to tell a lot of people I just couldn't keep a job, so they kept having that thing. But I learned a lot over the years with Mayor Bernard and working with the people like Ken and stuff like that. I wouldn't trade it. Lansing's my home.
Your life has essentially been mostly about public service.
Absolutely.
And that's amazing. And I don't think people realize how difficult a job that is and the things that you have to constantly battle and balance.
Yeah, I think people overall are great. It's just like anything else. You're going to have a handful that I wouldn't say you struggle with, try to explain things. And then you come to a point you say, well, I've done the best on that. Let's move to the next question we've got. And of course, when I was with Ken, we had those out in our interviews and Lansing like that too. But overall, my dad's retired colonel. I ended up here when I was just becoming an adult, and I've spent my adult with serving the public at 40 years of it serving Lansing. I go way back when some roads weren't even paved. Like that.
It's interesting to me because you served as police, chief of police, and city administrator before you were elected mayor. How did being a staffer and a senior staffer help you once you got elected? Because you were kind of sitting on the other side of the table at that point.
This is something, and I hope I don't go too far off because you have to rule me back inside. I've always told state officials they need to serve on a local level before they run for state office, whether it's school board, whether it's a township, whether it's a council, whatever, because you really don't know what you don't know. So, by me being able to do that, I had the opportunity to look at all phases of law enforcement, budgets, key thing in almost whatever arena you were in. And so it also let me look at when people are coming to you and they've got problems, you were there with them at one time, or you had the same issue. So you get to look at it a little differently and try to make things, make people understand, but also try to understand where they're coming from. And always the people that are in the rank and file, they've got solutions too. And I always played on that. I depended a lot on Ken when we were doing stuff out there, sitting at the sub, especially when he was my construction manager on Main Street when we put the 5th lane in. That was very important to bounce things off back and forth. So I think, Ken, it just helped me see a lot on both sides of it. I mean, started off as a patrol officer. I knew nothing about being a cop, except I wanted to be one. And back then, they give you a gun, a badge, and said, "Hang on, cowboy. Let's go. Let's go do that."
Kind of what we're doing now.
Yeah, just different
Right,
brands coming around
right.
different. And they went to the academy and stuff like that. And it's changed so much. Lansing has grown. When I started here, I think it's a couple thousand, and that might have been the prison. What we up now, Ken, about 12. So it's night and day. I remember one of my events. There's a Mayor Adams his daughter used to have a horse over on DeSoto Road, and I'd get out once in a while. So when you're the rookie, you're on midnight shift. So I'm driving down that old patrol car, and I look to the left of me, my window down, and I said, "Is that a horse coming by me?" Sure enough, the horse had stopped by, so I stopped. Then he backed up, stuck his head in the mirror. And this is 3 o'clock in the morning. I was tired anyway. I mean, so I said, I think they'll recognize him. So what happened was I stopped the car. He was only about 3 blocks. He still had his thing on you pull him with, and I walked him down to the Mayor John Adams' Times house, and his daughter put him up. It's those little things that you remember that you were not just a cop enforcing, you were more of a partner with the whole community, and that's what I probably enjoyed more than anything on that.
One of the things I remember you telling me, I think it was after you were elected county commissioner, but it might have been when you were running for county commissioner. One of the things that you definitely wanted to see is the county not being sued as often as it had been. So talk a little bit about, I know you guys still go into executive sessions because I'm watching what you're doing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's for legal purposes. Have you been sued less?
Absolutely. What I think when I came on the first 2 years, well, and I tell this to the county commissioner, so I'm not speaking to them. When I was in Lansing and they started showing the meetings, I used to say, go get a Diet Coke and a bag of popcorn because you're getting ready to see a show. And that's before they went to 5. And I totally believe that because it was a mess. We all disagree, but we've got to handle ourselves like an adult and be civil. So when I got there was about 3 or 4 ones that were been pending or were going along. And we did have executive sessions, but we also changed some things and hired some personnel so we wouldn't get ourselves in those situations again. And that's not meaning everybody that left us was a problem, but I've hired enough people in my lifetime to know when I see somebody. Council on Aging, Connie, John Jacobson. We're tied with Baser on housing permits, and that's because of his experience we brought in. Bill from Public Works, and the list just goes on and on. So hiring good people's been very important. And yeah, the lawsuits have gone down. Now anybody can sue anybody, and it usually happens, but we've had a lot of them dismissed because people that we didn't think it. Just because you sue us doesn't mean we're going to say, yeah, we're going to turn our head and pay you money or whatever.
Right. Sometimes you got to fight.
Sometimes you got to do it and stand up. And we've been very fortunate the last couple of years. We've got a couple, and sometimes when someone doesn't like what's been decided, then they'll sit back for a while. Even if it goes up to the Kansas Supreme Court, the fire department,
right? Then
they'll come back with a different angle. And it seems like sometimes the same player. They have all the right in the world to do that, but it's not nowhere near what it was before. Now that doesn't mean tomorrow I won't walk into a county commission meeting and say, Mike, we need to talk. But I think so far we're doing good, especially with Mark. I didn't know our county administrator when I got to know him. First thing walked in his office and said, Mark, Commissioner, I said, you don't smile. I want to see some teeth. Because I think that's very important when you work in the public. But you talk about a numbers person, he is really a numbers guy. He knows his numbers. That's why we've asked people that disagree with our numbers to come talk to us up in our office, and nobody's ever taken us up on it, which is a shame. But yeah, I think we're way down. I'd say at least 50, 60% down from what I stepped into. And there were simple fixes. It wasn't like I knew everything. It was just some simple things that I'd experienced over the years. I said, okay, we can make this. But it all starts usually with personnel.
This past budget cycle, you guys had to go vote to not go to revenue neutral and had to raise property tax a little bit. Yeah. I think that's, that hurt some of the commissioners at the time that were running a little bit, and it had forced a little bit probably of turnover on the commission.
Yeah.
How do you see property taxes in the future going, and what are we doing to help keep revenue either neutral or down, or what are we doing to increase revenue?
I don't think the revenue neutral thing was a good law. In fact, I'm not so sure they didn't cancel that. What I believe is last year is we had a roof fall. It came down, historical building, $4 million. Insurance wouldn't cover most
the county courthouse.
County courthouse.
Yeah, right.
Thanks, Ken. And so we end up probably going to put it back. It's probably going to cost us about 3 or 3.5. But you only keep so many reserves in your bank account because you don't really expect something like that. If you go with 2 million reserves or 3 million in just one area, it has to come from somewhere. What does it affect? It affects the mill levy. So you got a balancing act. Now, have we taken another look at it on how our reserves are and stuff like that? Absolutely. But the reason we went up last year, for most of the part, went up is we had a $4 million building. You got to spread it over, and you're making $600,000 or $800,000 payments then it takes a few mills to do that. So we're trying to get that paid off. I forgot, not as long as we want. So we knew we'd take a hit on that. But every year at the county level, it's a problem because the county doesn't receive sales tax dollars unless it's a special election. So the cities get to enjoy that. County has to go totally on property. And I think one of the things, and I know people will say, "Oh, Mike, we're talking about it." One of the things is we had revenue, we had LVTR, local ad valorem tax, that was being sitting there. They're supposed to be given back to cities, states, and city and county, and they chose not to. I can tell you what I think the problem is with, and I'm going to do my best to keep it down.
Sure.
I think the main problem with property tax is, first of all, we need a better plan as far as how we evaluate. You know, that the year 2021, you saw houses going up 30%, 40%. You can't, you can't do. It's good for the people to see it and they go to sell it, but you can't turn around and buy one for that same amount. What I think is going to happen, and it happened years ago. I think, my opinion, and I'll probably get some heat for this, is the reason they didn't do too much on this property state taxes because they're holding it off this coming year because you got elections coming up. And they're going to use that, because I've seen politics in my lifetime. They're going to use that as, I promise I'll do it. Well, they've been making the promise, and some of our local officials have done a real good job. They really went there. But what I found out is, if you don't have a representative that's been on the state capitol for a lot of years, their power is limited. If you turn them over all the time, I don't know if y'all remember Kenny Wilk or Candy.
Yeah, Kenny Wilk, sure.
Yeah, they were on a long time. They got a lot done for us. Of course, Candy passed away, and Kenny got out of it. He'd had enough. But we need people like that in that position. And you also can't be a state rep that's wanting to fight with everybody, especially locally, without calling out names. And you just can't do that. And I think we've got some good people. I can tell you now, I think, my opinion, every state person, excuse me, because I can just cough.
No, please.
The state rep is going to be challenged in Leavenworth County, in our 40th and 41, stuff like that. I know for a fact they're going to be challenged, and most of them are going to be challenged by county commissioners. The ones that are not in, or ones that are said, "I've had enough. I can't do it here local. I might have to go to the state." And I think they've got a good job.
As far as revenue goes for Leavenworth County, you guys are, and nothing you can really do about, the problems at the courthouse. I mean, you just got to deal with
Yeah.
it. And I know Commissioner Culbertson has been pushing this, and he's pushing it again. You look at who you collect taxes on property-wise. Fort's not one of them, right? And I think what Commissioner Culbertson's trying to do is trying to come to an agreement with folks at the Fort to get them to contribute.
Pilot program, pay in lieu of taxes.
Right, and it's basically for the ambulance service, since the ambulance service
$3
for the
million.
county, right, serves the Fort,
Yeah.
but the Fort's not really paying anything for it. So where do you stand on that? Because there are some commissioners that are like, whoa, let's not tick off the Fort because they do a lot for us.
And I think it was a conversation, Ken, we had last meeting. And when I said, this is you can't take it all one big picture. You got to have a slice of it. And what I mean by that is, I truly believe if you got the right players in the room and in DC, that they could be something that everybody could live with. Fort Riley. I was just at a county commissioners meeting. I was talking to their county commissioners on how they do it and stuff like that. But we've got to have some kind of return. I've always said, I still say it. In Missouri, you can't do a toll gate, but you can sure do it in Kansas. Everybody coming up, I'm going to take some hits on this. Everybody coming across that bridge pays, and it would bring it down because they're using our services, but they're not paying for it, and that puts it back on us. And Leavenworth County is so low on the totem pole for doing something like that, because when you got 45 or 50%, I think it's only like 35% that don't pay taxes. The rest of us have to pick it up. So you got to find a way to do it. I asked last time, because we're getting ready to go around and have meetings. Whenever I'm chair, I asked us to have meetings with all the entities, and this time I've included. Last week I asked to set one up for the Post too. Jeff's doing everything he can, but you've got to get the big players like Moran and those people to come in. I think if you get the right people at the table, you can get it done. I really do. But like anything else, people change. Dad's retired Army military. After a few years, you're gone. You're working with somebody, and then they're out of the picture, and you're having to start all over again. But at the same time, I think Vanessa was doing it, Commissioner Reed was saying, they bring a lot. They bring billions to it. That is not the thing. The thing is, we got to work together to help each other, because if not, we're going to have to do something, because I will not support going up on the mill levy again. I did it at one time. The other times I did it, I brought it down. Even though it was a fraction, I brought it down. Now, the mill levy also means you still get income coming in there, because the way the formula is set
The
up.
valuation
Yeah.
is what's really driving
That's
that too.
right.
And the legislature decided not to do anything about capping that.
I know.
Yeah.
They had all the opportunity. I think this year coming up, I was 4 or 5. We go in, we give direction to the county administrator. Last year, and we did this year, 2%. We don't see anything higher than 2%. But we got bridges that should have been replaced years ago. And we've got, those went from 3 years ago from about 900,000 to about $1.4 million when you replace a bridge now. And Bill's real good. Our public works about getting grants, but at the same time, still 1.4, and you've only got so much income. Then you got staff. We got 440 employees. Now, not all of them report to the county commission, but we set up a lot of the benefits and things like that. Sheriff's department and things like that. And I'll tell you the other thing that's very interesting. I'm going to change this. Working with elected officials is a new ball game for me. I think Wyandotte County went and got rid of all that, and now they have a county manager that oversees everything out there. It won't happen here because people don't want to do it. But so we have to be able to work with the sheriff and all these folks and things. I've seen you down at Calcine and Connie and things like that to help them. The budget is not going to get any better till we change some things that are happening at the state level. You'll see again that I'm not going to support going up on that mill levy. There's some things that we have to have. Salaries or income. I mean, everybody knows what it is. But I think what it really ruined it was we all got 2 or 3 years of COVID, and that just bumped everything out of control. And now you're trying to play catch up. But having a roof that's falling in or circuit building does not help us any. But I never believed in revenue neutral, because I think it's a little bit of to me, it's the question I asked when I went to state. I said, "State, are you revenue neutral?"
Of course they're not.
They got the tax. They got more dollars than we got coming in. Then if you're going to be the leadership role up there, why aren't you telling the counties and cities they should be? Lead by example. I expect my phone to be buzzing when I leave here, but
One of the things that I believe Commissioner Culbertson said was there should be some types of earnings tax or income tax, what is your thoughts on that?
I think there's about 2 or 3 of them out there that have been heard up in Topeka, and folks, we've testified on stuff like that. I think some states have done that, and what that does is, if you had an earnings tax or an income tax, anything like that, you could wipe out about 40% of the property tax. And what I like about that, it's people that are earning something here, not just earn it and then take it across the river, because that is important. So I'd be open for any of those things. I honestly think there's a combination, Joe, that you could do to bring it down and not hurt or not startle everybody doing it. Problem is, Leavenworth County, the state of Kansas, population's going down, or it's sure close to it. And when you can go to another state and not have to pay some of this, it's people are going to leave. They're going to cross the river.
But are you suggesting that tax would stack on top of property tax, or would it replace property tax?
Seeing the numbers, I really believe it could replace almost all of it. Now it depends what percentage you do on the taxes too. I mean, if you don't have a high income tax or a level like that, then it depends what percent you're going to take out of it. If you're going to take it and run like I've seen some other states do, the numbers show that you could bring it down to 20% or almost do away with it and pay from there. Other states have done that.
Interesting. One of the other things that was suggested was the Gateway Bridge project.
Yeah.
I was a big proponent of that during my race.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of value in connecting Eisenhower to
435 and
435,
152.
152. That's right. How realistic is something like that?
that's one of those things you got to have shovel ready. The county years ago decided not to go in with the at the Mark Regional Council and other parks, not to go in when they were doing 435. So guess what section of 435 is not there? Leavenworth County. And so we're trying to make up ground. Jeff is absolutely right, but it's going to take some independent dollars. It's going to be something like Carol Marinovich when she was the CEO out in Wyandotte County. Nobody will bring a NASCAR here. Nobody will bring that. Well, they did those ponds, and it was able to happen. I think this is something we'll keep pushing. A lot of people out there that probably know more than I do think it's a long shot. So was the Speedway.
Yeah, you brought up Star Bonds,
Mm-hmm.
and I know one of the projects that's kind of just been, I shouldn't say it's a project, but one of the ideas that's just been brought up, and I know you've been part of this. You met with Senator Klemp,
Yes.
and I believe Mark Lawfrey was with
Mhm.
you too. There's about 59 acres of land that I think it abuts Lansing. It's over by LCF. And the one thing that makes it interesting for potential development is the fact that there's some rail line going through there. So update us on that. I realize not a lot of it's been fleshed out yet,
Yeah.
but what's going on with that?
Well,
And keep in mind, I'm going to talk to Senator Klemp tomorrow on the video, so I'm going to ask him the same question.
well, I had lunch. Senator Klemp and I probably get together once a week, once every 2 weeks. We had lunch at Pullman's the other day. I really like Senator Jeff Klemp. I think he's really trying to do what's right, and he's taking off in the right direction. We just happen to see, with Lansing doesn't have an industrial park, and when you look at Port Authority and LCDC, they're always looking at rail, like you said, Kim, and this has an opportunity. Now, we've been working with with Jeff and the people at the Capitol. It's got bipartisan support. Even the governor has looked at this pretty strong. There's some things that have to happen before it can be realized, but I think this has a lot more potential taking off than the bridge. And I think what it does is if you can develop down there or do whatever you want down there, then that small amount of money, 50 million, whatever it was, they were going to do on K5, that brings it further north. And that opens that whole row up to grants and state funding. So I think that one's going to occur next year too. Just when you never say never, but just when you say it, something goes wrong. But that one's moving along pretty quick. But there'll be only so much that Jeff can go into. But you've got the basis of it right now. What's happening there? Yeah.
Do you feel that LCDC and the LCPA are going to be the ones to market that? Because it's another question. What about the future of those organizations?
Well, I went at the Leavenworth meeting the other day, and I saw where they're talking about the LCDC, and Baser dropped out. I would think if Port Authority and LCDC got involved, it'd be after the city of Lansing and the county decided what they want to do with it. I'm not saying they wouldn't help market it, because I think LCDC and Port Authority have a place. I really do. But at the same time, there's just some things that we're going to have to change to work better together. But my opinion is, yeah, we'd come together down the line, because they're a marketing tool, and we need that. I just don't think we want that right now. There's so much friction going on,
Right,
that I'm trying to. That's why I volunteered to be on the Port Authority. There's so much friction going on to try to resolve some of this. And the thing that a lot of people don't understand, LCDC is not the commercial portion. They do the industrial part. So when you're asking them what's the bang for the buck, and you want commercial, that's not fair to them, because that's not what they do. So we've got to figure out a way. And we tried it with the economic developer at the county, but it didn't work out the way we wanted to. We've got to figure a way to do both that. I've always thought like the idea of the chamber and LCD together. And that's one of the things I had a lot of conversation with when I was running the first time for county commissioner.
Is there still discussion, because you had an economic development person a year ago?
Yeah.
They left, and the position was not filled. Is that the way it's going to be, or are you going to revisit that and potentially hire someone to do county economic development?
I don't think it's going to be filled like that. I think City of Leavenworth and other people who don't have a full-time could probably do that. Really, I think that's LCDC's role in Port Authority. When I was the interim down in Miami County, when they were looking for a manager, when I was a city manager down there a couple of years ago, Miami County has a county economic program that they run. I think she's tough.
Janet.
Yeah,
Right.
She's a go-getter. I think that's something that we need to look at and go forward. My feeling is if we don't get something resolved with LCDC is not going to exist, because the funding's gone away, and we're trying to make it more private. I still think the best solution would be the chamber, and then work together. They got staff, and you need some more people. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but something has to give here. It's gonna, because I see more people dropping out. Baser's not coming back from when I'm talking to their city manager and talking to the mayor down there.
You think the city of Leavenworth is serious about dropping out too?
I think, a lot of times people go to do it. Lansing was for a while, and when I was a city administrator, and then all of a sudden they say, okay, we want to stay and be part of this because what's good for the county, good for the city, is good for the county, good for the county, good for the city. So then when you isolate and you start looking like, well, I want it in my community or I want it in my county, something like that's when you run into problems. I think Leavenworth right now, if I had to guess out loud, I think it'd be a close vote, but things could change.
And I think Leavenworth has probably benefited more than anybody else
Absolutely.
from LCDC.
And Tongi,
And
Tongi, maybe.
See, that's where I think, if I could just touch on that real quick, I know we're on time. We've given, when we had the COVID money and when we had mainly the sales tax money, when we did it, we renewed the countywide sales tax. We put millions of dollars down in Tongi, millions, and it's developed. It took 15 years. We put millions in Leavenworth. We didn't give millions to Lansing and Baser, and that's when I remember I presented that check to when I first became, because I said, "You guys, come on, we're all in this together." So I think what they're doing is okay, but they're coming when they say, "Well, we only get $90,000 done." I told them last meeting that's not correct. We wrote you a check for about $5 million, and went down there, and the city and Tonganoxie took it over. It's just unbelievable sometimes some of the things that we get wrapped around on, that we should be able to work out.
There's one more thing that's in the news right now that I want to ask you about.
Sure.
And that's RHID.
Yes.
Right. And I guess we know how it's going with Lansing, and it's being fought. That housing development's being fought. The thing that was interesting to me, though, is Tonganoxie's got all these RHID developments going on. I don't think that anybody kind of got up in arms about that, but they're already rolling forward. That's already, that's been approved, and the tax revenue is going where it's going.
That's right.
For Lansing, at least on that one project, it doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Or for Baser, they're fighting Baser now on it.
Baser has an RHID application.
They're going to want to do one.
Okay.
The problem with, first of all, we didn't even know what was going on with RHID. We didn't even have it on the books because it's not a new way to do it.
Did Tonganoxie sneak that past you?
And unless something brings it up to us within 30 days, as I found out later, it automatically is done. It's a done deal. It's a vote. So that was kind of interesting. That's when we tried to set up, and I tried to make it as vague as we can because we want to be able to help people in growth. But that's why we got a program now that defines some of the stuff down there. But I didn't even, I've done all those things for years, but I hadn't even heard of RHID until come like that. I think what started Leavenworth County is we didn't know about it. We just didn't know about it. And if we'd known about it, but there's a lot of fighting. And I didn't realize this until we started researching it. Learn something every day. Is the school can nix it, the county, or they can break it off by a resolution. What's it called? When you have to have most of the votes in it. I forgot what it's called. And they could do it, but it's not feasible. Developers going to ask for something. It depends what they're willing to give. And I'll say this too. If you don't grow, you die. So you've got to, that's why I told them, I'm hoping we can come to some agreement, because Lansing's been looking for homes or stuff like that, except for the apartments. And that's a great place to live in Lansing. But if we don't give them something, neighborhood valuation works so well for us. Can you remember on the commercial stuff like that? But it's just that it's my way or the highway. And folks, that's going to cause Leavenworth County cities and incorporate some problems.
You have said, and I believe in an LCPA meeting, the Port Authority meeting, that at least I've been told that you didn't want to fund LCDC. So I find it interesting that you just said that you wanted to. Is that accurate? Was it misrepresentation?
That's not accurate at all.
Okay.
In fact, honestly, when the county commissioners tried to do away with it 4 or 5 years ago, and I set up meetings. And they didn't go well, but I set up meetings with the Port Authority and all the people for about 3 months. And what happened there is that we cut it in half. But I can tell you now, it was all on the table.
Mhm.
That $300 something was gone.
We sat through those
Mhm.
meetings too.
Okay. And
Mhm.
it was all in the game, and it got ugly, and we couldn't do anything. So, the following year, there are some county commissioners that are no longer here, and I don't know how some of the new ones feel that think they should be independently funded. I've often said that we need to be part of it, but we need to be fair. Leavenworth picked up some part of that, did that. Yeah, I don't think LCDC should go away. I think we just got to figure out a way to make it work. The same with the Port Authority. Right now, it's a pass. But let's be honest. When you got money going to the Port Authority and they funnel it down to LCDC, when you say you're not receiving money from the county, that's just incorrect. Where did the Port Authority get it? They got it from the county. And then you get rid of a member out there because of that, then that's just like rubbing salt in the wound. And that's why I said, in fact, I called them on it, and I told them, and I talked to them. We called them on the thing, and they did the correct thing.
They relented. Yeah, they relented.
They did the correct thing, and I've had some talks one-on-one after meetings with some of the folks down there. I mean, it's not a bad group. I just don't know if everybody knows fighting is for the same goal or for the same thing.
Mhm.
Until we do that, we're going to do it. Now, I do think the Port Authority and the LCDC should have terms. I think they should rotate. I don't know if they do or not, but I think they should rotate because you need some new ideas come in. We're having the same problem, so let's bring some new ideas in. But no, I was honestly, I was the only one that maybe one other person, Vicky, was wanting to keep it rolling. In fact, when they withheld payment, I asked them, I was chair then, I said, I think it's a chair. I said, could we pay at least the 3 months that they've already worked for us? And I was 4-1. So I said, okay, I see where this is going. So there's some real hard feelings on there. But, you got Willie Duff, who I think is going to be a great thing. Jeff is smart. Jeff just believes in certain ways. And, and I try to be just as fair as I can. I think that's why the 3 times in 5 years they elected me as chair. But my gallo's not big enough. But I'm trying to be able to work through something a little bit. When you're butting heads, it's hard to do. And both groups have good people on it. That's what's so bad about it, smart people.
What's really unique about LCDC is it does have that private component to it,
Yes.
which I think has community buy-in that we don't see in a lot of other organizations. And it's community and government working together. So I struggle to see why we can't make that work.
We could. I just think you're going to have some different outlooks from people that are maybe some fresh people coming in. I really believe that some people have stuck in some ways, and some people in the county have stuck in some ways. And we got to bring new people to the table that want to work with it.
But you mentioned something earlier, and I've heard this, but not from an elected person, about the potential of having the chamber and the LCDC kind of work together.
Yeah.
How far along is that effort?
Well, years ago, I brought it up when Lansing, a long time when Lansing was getting ready to pull away from the chamber. God, folks, about 20, 25 years. Because Lansing at the time thought they won, and we thought they worked good together. So the mayor, Bernard, and them kept us. We've had those discussions, but they come down to turf. And when you get that involved, then you have problems. I think that's the perfect solution.
You think the two organizations are sometimes at odds? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think the people that put them in place are the elected officials.
Mhm.
Make it a turf, and they report to the elected officials, and you serve at the pleasure. And if you're not pleasing them, then you'll probably be gone. So I think that would be a better.
Well, we see that working in Johnson County very well. I mean, those organizations are made up of development and chamber, and they're one large organization.
Yes, but to be fair, there's a much bigger business base there than there is in Leavenworth.
But one thing I say, when I was city administrator, I took a couple trips down there and talked to them because this had come up. And you're exactly right. There is a lot of business, but the mind concept on how they do it, I think can fit any size that you're doing. If you got bigger numbers, larger numbers, and you got larger commercial and larger stuff like that, it makes sense that you can do more with that, with the funding that's coming in. The problem is relinquishing from some of the elected officials some of that and let them do their thing.
Yeah.
I always used to say, and I know, Ken, you heard it a lot of time, I would say, okay, this is the committee. Y'all got it. I'm out of here. Call me if you got a problem. And of course they would. But try to stay clear. And by the staff doing it and not having to look over their shoulder, I was very proud of Lansing. We accomplished a lot of things in Lansing when I was out there, and I think it can be done in other levels too. But being a county commissioner and the politics there is 10 times stronger than ever was in a local. Joe, I'm telling you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we're going to shift, like we always do, to our second half of our segment here and talk about what's on our mind. And we're always going to start with the lovely Kathryn Hancock. What's on your mind today?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Here we go.
Yeah, well, that's a loaded question. I think what's on my mind today is my heart's pretty heavy with the first responder that passed away this week,
Absolutely.
Graham Hoffman. So that's really just what's been on my mind, and I've
Yeah.
been thinking about. That's all I got.
I think that's really interesting because could that have been prevented? We've been fortunate, Leavenworth County never to have an incident like that, but could that have been prevented?
Yeah. But there's a lot of things. I remember when we had a dispatcher, I think for the sheriff's department 25 years ago, was seeing a guy and he was something else. And I remember getting a report. I don't know if you were on yet, Joe. Yeah, might wait for your time because you guys are young pups. He shot her in the head. And we always thought the same thing. Domestic violence wasn't the main topic thing. We had the new laws we got in place. And I'll never forget getting that call because me and her got along great. And I'll never forget getting that call. And she kept telling me, he's okay. He's going to be okay. And I knew my heart he wouldn't. So some things you can't plan for, but I'm sure there's going to be looking on how you handle a place. It's when you let your guard down or when you think all the time you've got to upgrade your practices on what can happen. World's changing way too fast for me. So you got to be prepared if somebody take a knife from you or reach for your gun when you're rolling around or spray you with your own mace. That hurt anyway. I had one of those wrestling matches on the highway, so you got hold of my mace. The only person I think it ever worked on was me because that was a stinging. So you have to go, and there's a lot. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of what is and what's that. Bottom line, and life was taken. That's just a terrible.
Mr. Miller.
Well, since we got Mike here, and I know he's one of the top Chiefs fans in the area, this is coming out of left field. Will the Chiefs or the Royals be on the Kansas side of the border ever? And will they be in Leavenworth County ever?
I think they'll be, if they come to Kansas, I think they'll be close. I don't know they will. There's a lot of talk still going back, but and my gut feeling tells me they've been there, and they're one of the few stadiums and things that have the history they have from coming from Texas, that even though they didn't get the funding they wanted on the election, I think they'll stay in
I think you're right about the Chiefs. I think it's more
the Royals,
potential about the Royals.
with our soccer complex. That has more of a chance, Ken, I believe.
Yeah, you could have a smaller stadium.
Yeah. I mean, when the state legislators can overnight offer all kind of money when they can't get anything else done, it kind of tells you they're out there. But I think the Royals have a good. It's a possibility.
It's star bonds again.
That's
and
exactly
I know
right.
Star bonds are starting to be talked about a lot, and maybe for some smaller projects we might see in Leavenworth County.
That's exactly where they're coming in at now. That they've reduced to how they do that. That'll be a big help. But it's still tax one way or the other.
So on my mind is really I attended the Hope Gala on Saturday. It was the first time I'd ever attended that event, and just the number of people. I'm continued to be amazed, and it started during my campaign, and at the number of people that love this community and they donate to so many things, and you see so many of these people at all of these different events, and they give of their time and themselves, and it's just amazing, and it's just such a great honor to be part of this county.
It is. You are absolutely right. People don't realize the volunteers. We got Meals on Wheels, and we're delivering over 100,000 meals a year. And now there's a waiting list which we're trying to fix because we want to make sure everybody. I do that once in a while, and I'm sure some of y'all haven't. If you ever want to see somebody at the door that appreciates something, it's just unbelievable. I guess the thing it's been on my mind, maybe as I'm getting older, I'm getting a softie. I have a tough time looking at people, maybe not homeless, but people that are suffering, and you see them walking down the street, and you can tell they have nowhere to go, and they don't know where their resources are. that just, as I got older, that just digs into me pretty hard. I know we can't fix everything that's going on, but that what really bothers me.
Leavenworth's known, though, as a town that tries to help.
Oh, yes.
For the size it is and the amount of organizations. I mean, that's what I've noticed.
You're
And Lawrence
absolutely
was kind of
right,
like
Ken.
that too, but Leavenworth is definitely like that.
There's
So many
no doubt.
nonprofits.
Yeah, and
Right.
Joe hit it on the head. If you go back and you say, okay, you see the people doing like some of the events that they host, something like that. Well, go behind the scenes and see how many people worked on that to put that together,
Mhm.
and how many funds were donated, and how by give their time or their vehicle to drop off things. I don't think that's promoted enough, because there are some people out here that really don't want credit for it, but they're out there doing it.
One of the best things, and I know you've been through leadership classes. Have you been through the leadership? Not
Come
yet.
on.
Okay. But that's one of the things that you learn, because one of those segments is about all the nonprofits
exactly
that you
right.
actually have to help out, which was great. But how many there were? That's what amazed me when I went through it. And I went through it like 14 years ago. So
You know, something we speak on that just real quick that I have a tough time with, and some county commissioners look the other way. I think the taxes are also here to help make people's lives better. So when you get down and you're looking at budget time and you're looking at council, the mills or something like that, or you've got something that's an organization that people don't think county dollars should be funding it, but it really helps out. It really helps out the people in the community. So that's something we have to weigh. We deal away with a lot of our thing. We ask people to go raise money for it, but there's a lot of places that I think CASA, is part of it, and other places that I think are important. I also think, I was a founding member of the Violence of a Domestic Shelter, and I think those are people that need help. You watch somebody get their head blown off like I did one time, and over a domestic thing, you kind of look at it kind of different. And I think, Ken, that goes back to where you asked me, and Joe, you asked me, the jobs I've had. I'm well-rounded, and I'm not talking about the way I eat. I'm just well-rounded about seeing the things that I've seen. But as I get older, I'm more of a softie, because I just hate to see people suffering.
Well, that's our segment for SorWil Community Solutions. Thank you very much for joining us
Thank you.
today. Thank you for being here.
Appreciate it, Joe.
And
The invite.
answering our questions.
Great
you
to
think
see
you're going to run for re-election?
you. There's a good possibility.
At least you answered the question. I give you credit for that. Give you credit.
All right.
All right, that's it.